Existential scenarios like an asteroid hitting Earth face pretty long odds.
The likelihood of that happening are literally astronomical.
But just in case, the Earth has a watchman on the lookout for exactly the kind of threat that wiped out the dinosaurs.
So we now have the technology to detect these things far in advance.
Lindley Johnson is NASA's Planetary Defense Officer.
We believe we have already found all of the near-Earth asteroids that are of that size that could cause the same kind of catastrophe that occurred to the dinosaurs. But there are still a few large ones to find out there.
Johnson and other planetary defenders have a plan to redirect an asteroid potentially heading for Earth. And next summer, NASA will test that capability for the first time by crashing a probe into an asteroid's moon, knocking it off orbit and off course.
We've been given the tools to prevent this ever happening to us again, and so we should use them.
The Watchers call scenarios like these high-impact, low-probability events.
Up from the crater of 4,000-foot-high Mount Vesuvius rise towering clouds of smoke and volcanic ash.
The 1944 eruption of Mount Vesuvius rained down on the Naples area some 2,000 years after it destroyed Pompeii.
This sort of gets into social science.
Geophysicist Michael Poland is with the U.S. Geological Survey.
How do you coordinate an evacuation of a city of millions? There are environments like that all over the world, not just Naples, but environments like that in Indonesia and the Philippines. You know, there was an eruption of Taal volcano in the Philippines, which is only a few tens of kilometers south of Manila, where there's millions of people that live. And if there had been a very large eruption of that volcano, fortunately the eruption was small and no one died, but if there had been a large eruption, how do you coordinate a really mass evacuation?
There's no stopping a volcano.
No, occasionally we get this question, like, why don't you just drill into the volcano and pump water down there? And the scale of the problem is really incomprehensibly big. So no, you can't stop a volcano from erupting. You might be able to divert some of the products, but the best mitigation methods we have today are to get out of the way.
The eruption of Mount St. Helens.
In just minutes, the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens resulted in 57 lives lost and hundreds of millions of dollars in damage. After destroying every living thing within 230 square miles, the devastation forced the world to take volcano monitoring a little more seriously.
The science of eruption forecasting certainly has advanced quite a lot. We can recognize eruptions that are becoming restless based on patterns in earthquakes, ground deformation, gas emissions.
Poland also oversees the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory.
In Yellowstone, the worst case scenario is always a tremendous explosion of the kind that last happened about 631,000 years ago. That was one of these super eruptions that occur on average maybe every 50 to 100,000 years somewhere on the planet.
Scientists think that worst case scenario is also the least likely to happen. But if it did...
It's not going to cause our extinction. That's not to say that it wouldn't be pretty devastating. Sure. These sorts of eruptions would be immediately devastating to everything around them, out to a radius of hundreds to thousands of kilometers.
While hundreds of active volcanoes exist around the world, another threat hangs right above our heads. Luckily, this July 23, 2012 eruption on the sun that sent giant particle clouds hurtling through space at 6.7 million miles an hour missed the Earth.
We monitor the sun 24/7.
Dr. Doug Biesecker is a solar physicist with NOAA's Space Weather Prediction Center.
But what keeps me up about space weather is missing the forecast of the 1 in 100 year sort of storm, the sort of storm that would cause widespread power outage. You know, you could imagine a lot of maybe the entire Northeast losing power for at least a few hours, if not for a day or more.
In 1859, one of these eruptions hit Earth. Now known as the Carrington event, it's the largest geomagnetic storm on record.
The technology of the day was the telegraph, and telegraph operators were able to disconnect their batteries and use the electricity caused by the solar storm to run their systems.
Today, a Carrington-like event would be similar to an electromagnetic pulse, or EMP. In that case, the plan is a temporary shutoff to save the grid.
What I can tell you is in this country, we work very closely with the power grid operators to make sure that we can keep the lights on even in an extreme event.
So there's different levels they can reach before they hit the big red button that turns it all off.
Right. And you know, the current thinking is we'll never have to hit the big red button, even in an extreme case.
We might not be able to predict or prevent every catastrophe or global disaster, but having early warning systems in place is always a good idea. Gabe LaMonica, CBN News.